What's up, Sales RXers? Look, with outbound conversion rate benchmarks being as low as 3%, it's no secret that it's really tough right now for a lot of sellers. And if you're an individual contributor or a senior leader in marketing, RevOps, sales, any role that has a revenue related metric that you have to attain, it's time to find a better pipeline channel. So, what's better than selling to someone who doesn't know you or your product? Selling to someone who does. This is where Champify comes in. Champify monitors key contacts at accounts like champions, post-sale sponsors, admins, heavy users, and they enrich that data to detect job changes, determine relevancy for outreach, and then assigns and alerts reps with those newly assigned leads. So if you haven't tried out Champify yet, you need to give it a shot. Stop spinning your wheels with outbound heavy sales motions and start selling to people you've already sold to. You can click the link below in the show description for an extended proof of concept and free data test from the team at Champify. What you'll do is click podcast in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Let them know that the Sales RX podcast sent you so they know who to give the VIP treatment to. Now let's jump into today's episode.
Yeah, so we've whipsawed in the market from we need to be very hard-nosed, aggressive managers of inputs, calls, demos, activities, whatever you want to call them, and being pretty aggressive about it and holding people to a pretty rigorous standard, all the way to, well, we only have to care about how happy somebody is, whether they're fulfilled in their job, and all of these different things. And, to maybe sum it up, we've kind of got we whipsaw it from really hard management to really soft management. And if you go inside of an organization, you find these binary archetypes of people. Neither one of them work, actually. You actually have to be right in the middle, where you can be a people-focused leader with intense operating rigor. And that's how you get to the best results, because the best team members or the best performers on your team are going to want to trust you and know that you have their back, but they also want to be pushed, and they want you to push them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you hit on something really important here, Tommy, because this is one of the reasons that I spun up my Millennial Leadership Bootcamp, and it's one of the things that I talk about, because 60% of the workforce by 2025 is going to be millennials and Gen Z. And so in my opinion, right now in leadership, you have people teaching practices from the 80s and 90s when our mom and dads were like, oh, it's all about Gordon Gekko. Greed is good. You're like you said, focus on those inputs, work hard, hustle porn, 90 hours a week. Oh, you just want to do your job? Then you're quiet quitting. No, this is what you're paying me to do. And I do think that people have a hard time being transparent with their leadership, being a people person, being a person first, and also kind of wearing their heart on their sleeve and walking reps through implications and taking ownership of that. I hate parrot leadership, where it's like, hey, if we don't fix this, Tommy's going to come down hard on me as the founder, and we're going to have this whole problem. It's like, no, hey, this is the agreement that we put in place for you as a rep working here. Let's figure out what that looks like and how I can support you so that we can get you to where you need to go, because I can't justify the ROI of having you in the seat if we're not going to do our due diligence here and do what needs to be done. So let's talk about your modern approach to rep performance management. What does that look like, and how are you advising people on this and sharing this with your leaders in your organization?
Yeah, so I like to sum it up in one statement, which is authenticity via rigor. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So in the modern workforce, really in any relationship that we have, we want the people that we're talking to and working with to be authentic with us, be transparent, be honest, build trust. Now, a lot of leaders are not inauthentic on purpose. They're inauthentic because they're trying to actually figure out what's going on themselves while they are communicating changes, activities, goals with their reps. So when I say authenticity via rigor, the rigor component is the leader, the manager, the director, the VP, the CRO, understanding to the T how this business works and operates, how every dollar comes in, how every dollar goes out, what the risks are, what the opportunities are, and being able to communicate that succinctly with salespeople, AEs, SDRs, CSMs. If you walk a sales team through a model that shows them if we don't increase goals or quotas, this company will run out of money. Everyone's going to sit there. They're not going to be happy about it, but they're going to say, "Yeah, I get it. I understand." like that. That's how it's going to happen. So you were authentic. We have to raise goals, but I went through the rigorous process of understanding why we have to raise goals, and now I'm going to share that with you.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they're not going to be happy about it, but they're going to trust you. And in my experience managing people, you never ever have a problem with your team when you're not doing well and you communicate it well and they understand why you're not doing well.
Yeah.
When you have problems with your team, it's when it's unpredictable, when they actually can't pinpoint whether what you're saying is conjecture, from the leadership team, let's rah, get everybody going, or truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, people always assume the worst, right? Especially when looking at their sales leaders. So it's really important. Authenticity via rigor.
I love that. And I think that authenticity part is synonymous with how I view transparency.
Mm-hmm.
I was recently talking to a rep who was told that they were full cycle selling. I ended up, reaching out to their sales leader, kind of learn a little bit more about how they determine those quotas and things like that. And that change in process, like they eliminated their SDR team. Now all the AEs are full cycle. And he said, look, the way I walked it through everybody is like, if you don't want your quota to increase and we're letting go of the SDR team, you got to understand we're responsible for this metric called CAC, customer acquisition cost. The more people I have to hire, the more marketing people I have to funnel in leads, the more SDRs I have to have, the higher your quota is going to be. So would you rather do 2 hours of prospecting a day? Or would you rather your quota go up 30%? And then they were like, oh yeah, no, we don't want our quotas to go up. We like where we're at. We'll go do some selling because we're good at that. That's why we're AEs in the first place, because we're good at that top of funnel outreach because we were all SDRs at some point. And like you said, that authenticity is like, I'm going to show you the curtain behind the Wizard of Oz here. I'm going to show you the numbers and what's going on, but I need you to understand that stuff. And that's what I think a lot of modern leaders also forget is you have to understand what your VP of sales or your CRO or even your founder is responsible for to their board. And by understanding that, then the method behind the madness becomes more clear. And it's not just raising quotas for the sake of raising quotas.
Exactly. Not understanding all of these metrics and how the financial plan plays into the sales plan and how the sales plan flows into rep day-to-day activities. It's like going and playing a game without knowing the rules, right? And especially in startups, I spent my career in startups, and oftentimes in the early days, the math doesn't work, and it's not supposed to work. You raise some money, you go to market, and then people join a company thinking the math already works, right? And I spoke to someone yesterday, and she was asking me, she wanted to ask for a raise, and I asked her what her OTE was. She said her OTE is 200K. I'm like, cool. Like, how much ARR did you bring in 2022? She was like 500K, and I was like, okay. They pay you 200, you return 500. That math doesn't work, actually. So if I were you, I'd be worried about getting fired, like versus asking for a raise, right? And it's like these little things that I think we need to democratize for the sales world holistically, so you know the rules of the game, right? And you can make better decisions for yourself, right? And most people aren't out to get you, right? Most people are just kind of executing the rules of their game inside of a business. And when you can understand what those rules are and communicate them well, I think you can bring people along with you for the ride.
Yeah, completely. And that 200K is not 200K because you're forgetting about benefits. You're forgetting about employee taxes that they're paying, health insurance, 401k matching, if that's there, anything above and beyond that. People always forget that it's not the OTE. There's so much more beyond that as an employee that you're costing the company, which is okay. Like those are employee given rights, but it's what is the number typically then in that situation? Like you said, 200 to 500, it doesn't make sense. Is that the same as a 3.5 pipeline that they look for, 3.5 times your pipeline, or how does that number work out?
Yeah. I mean, healthy sales contribution, you're looking at, you want 18 to 22% of annual revenue fully baked, roughly. So, rough math, right? If you're making 200K as an OTE and assuming you've got some benefits and some stuff that's tacked on, you should be bringing in $1 million a year. Right. So is the rough math. And again, it's okay for that math to be off in the early days of a company because you're going to market, you're going to sort of pay up a little bit so you can get yourself out there, but that math is going to have to work. I think that's just what people have to understand is that at some day, someone's going to walk into that company and say, it is time for the math to work, right? And on that day, like quotas either going to go up or resources are going to get pulled or whatever it is. And it's on the leader to communicate that journey along the way. Like when I run sort of sales at a like 0 to 1 startup twice. And I tell everybody who comes in, listen, here's your quota, here's your OTE. I may have totally effed this up. I may have over goaled you and it's not possible to hit, or I may have under goaled you and it's really easy. You're so early, I don't know, actually. So I need you as part of this agreement between us to recognize this is probably going to change pretty aggressively over the next 9 to 12 months. Now, that conversation is all you have to do to get somebody bought in to the changes that are going to happen versus not having that conversation and 2 months in, you're like, oh, actually, we have to double the quota. You're crushing it. What do you mean you have to double my quota? Just because I'm crushing it? Versus, well, hey, remember when we spoke and I was like, I'm not really sure what the quota should be. So I kind of, put my finger in the wind here to try to figure it out. And it's a totally different way of doing things. And this is where I kind of get back to. It's like, you have to be super authentic with people.
Yeah. And I'm sure in doing that, not only will people perform better, but we're not in the competitive market of 2020, 2021, and even early half of 22, where it's, I'll just go take $10,000 to work somewhere else where grass is always greener. Right now, it's like, like you said, that rep, it's like, you should actually be concerned about losing your job. If you're 200 OTE and you're bringing in 500K, you should be finding ways to go above and beyond that. But I get the other side of it too. Like you just did 120% of quota, you made President's Club, and now your quota goes up. Or you get a promotion to senior enterprise AE or commercial or something like that. And not only does your quota go up, but like you only get a little bump in salary and all this stuff. And it might feel like a drag, but ultimately I think, like you said, it is important to walk people through those numbers because then you have buy-in and adoption. And I think a lot of times it shows that you're not afraid to talk about those numbers because it does feel like, am I working for some guy who's trying to like hire me to go do a pyramid scheme somewhere who won't like share the numbers with me? Just go knock on a bunch of doors and demonstrate these vacuums. I bring that up because I sold Kirby vacuums in college. So it was like, some guy hired a bunch of peons to go knock on doors and spill wine on people's carpets and vacuum it up and show them how great it was. Let's talk a little bit. So we talked about the leadership side of it. So what's an actionable tip that you would give a leader to creating this authenticity? Or is it a regular meeting that you should be having with your people? Is it a quarterly review of the business numbers so your reps understand what's going on? Like, where would I even start? I'm a leader and I'm like, oh man, it's recession. Things are going on. I just had to lay off 20% of my sales team and we're raising quotas and we're not implementing new tech. We're not doing anything different with marketing. We're not doing any new training. Our SDRs aren't performing. How do you solve this for your reps? Like, what's the first step you would tell someone to take? And obviously there's a lot of different scenarios, but if I'm just coming to you right now and I'm like, Tommy, help me. Like, what kind of advice would you give me?
Yeah. So back to my point before, what you have to do is you have to make the unpredictable predictable, right? And that's where the authenticity comes in. And the way you can make the unpredictable predictable is through a highly consistent sharing of information. So what I used to do, or what we used to do at a company I worked for, is the CFO of the company and me as the VP of sales once a month would sit down with the sales organization, 70, 80, 90 people at its peak, and we would go through exactly what we communicated to the board about how we did. And when you communicate to the board, you're not just going through, we closed this logo or we did this renewal. You're going through like, hey, like, we lost money on our SDR team. Or like, hey, like this segment of customers is really unprofitable. And we'd go through that. Right. And then it's a pretty magical thing because sometimes what flows from those numbers are decisions that are tough. Right. Like, hey, we're going to deprecate all these leads, or we're going to do something that maybe feels like it's unfair to the sales team. But when you do that and you communicate that in that way, the sales team starts to have the ideas themselves, actually, right? And when you have to go and say like, hey, like, listen, like we need to rethink our SDR program because our ACV doesn't support paying out an AE and an SDR and an AM on this deal, but you've already gone through, you already walked through that, it totally changes the game.
Mm-hmm.
So step one, whether it's you or you find your financial partner in the organization, set up that monthly, quarterly, here's how we're doing at the highest level, and here are things that everybody should know. And that's gonna be a little bit different per business, right? On kind of what your business does. But I think that's like the easiest action you can take, and share it, right? Like sanitize the materials, all that good stuff, but share it out with the sales organization, share it out with the sales managers, and ensure everybody's on the same page, right? And what you're doing is you're being proactive about absorbing the cultural hit or the blunt force when you have to make a difficult decision.
I love that. I've always been skeptical of companies who don't have their CFO a little bit more front and center, because it makes me go like, what's the vision? What are we doing here? You got the CEO just presenting our revenue attainment, but what about like where we're at as a company? What can you show us, and what can you inspire us with?
It's like it's also important to be honest. Like it's okay to share bad results with a plan of how the results are going to get better. But if you share bad results and you make them sound like they're good results, like people are smart. They're going to see that you're full of it. So it's important to like just be thoughtful and be honest when you have these conversations. And early in my tenure at my last company, we had a really bad 2 quarters, like really, really bad, like company ending bad almost. And the CEO of the company got up in front of the whole org, 60 people at the time, and he did a town hall. And on the town hall slide, he put a bunch of empty desks on the screen and was like, here's our performance. Here's what's going to happen if we don't fix this performance. We're going to run out of money by this day. If we run out of money by this day, this is what happens, right? And then there was a picture of empty desks. I was scared shitless because I was like, oh my God, everyone's going to go quit now. You're going to get so nervous. Nobody quit. Not a single person in the organization quit. Actually, it was a pretty beautiful thing. Everybody kind of banded together and said, okay, like we have a problem. We just need to like go fix it, right? And then we can get back to worrying about like growing our careers and asking for more money and things like that. So transparency done well is the key.
Yeah. And then I know we're coming up on time here, but when you're getting all these data points in front of your reps, what's the best way to manage performance to them? Is that something that then not only becomes part of your weekly sales meeting, but also your weekly one-on-ones with each person? Like, how do you typically implement that so it's not just like once a month we're talking about it and then nobody thinks about it the rest of the month until next month when we talk about it again?
Yeah, it is on the VP of sales or the CRO to really be banging that drum on the operating rhythm, right? So it starts with if there's a director level, okay, do we know what our goals are? Okay, then into the manager level, do we know what our goals are? To the rep level, do we know what our goals are? And everybody is checking in up and down the chain on whatever the performance cycle is. So if it's a weekly one-on-one or bi-weekly, whatever that is, cool. The rep is going to talk to the manager about what they're doing in their pipeline. The manager is going to talk to their director about, hey, we've gotten more profitable in these segments. The director is going to talk to the VP and say, hey, like, look at these 3 teams. They've gotten, this much more profit. And it's on the VP of sales. And I will just say this over and over again. Like, it's actually not on the director, manager, or rep to build and maintain the rhythm. It's on the VP of sales to be really annoying about it, right? And like, do a monthly email, pull it up in the sales kickoffs every month, make sure it's in every one-on-one, right? Like, and have that cadence, and then make everybody report on it on a certain time frame. So for me, like my directors had to give me a memo every 2 weeks. Like I need a memo on what we're doing in written format, which makes them go to their managers and say, hey, I need a memo from you, right? Right. And I need it on Thursday because I got to, by the way, give mine on Friday. But you got to be really rigorous about it.
Yeah. Actually make it Wednesday because Thursday I'm going to build the deck that I'm going to then put on Friday.
Yeah, exactly. Thursday I'm going to prepare if in case there's something bad in here and I'm going to get yelled at.
Exactly. Tommy, this has been great. I love it. A modern approach to rep performance management. I love that authenticity leads to vigor. That's really awesome because you're totally right. Like It helps people band together, it helps people understand the mission, also the vision, and then more importantly, the values of the company when you put that call to action in there. As we close out the episode, let the listeners know if they want to engage with you further, what's the best place to connect?
Yeah, so my email is pretty simple. It's tommy@onrhythm.io. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Tommy McNulty, or on Twitter. My Twitter handle is City Stoop, which is an ode to my upbringing in Brooklyn. And that is where you can find me.
Nice. I love it. Brooklyn's finest. Ladies and gentlemen, all the Sales RXers and first-time listeners, thank you for giving us your time today. You know the drill. Every single Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern, we release a new episode on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, anywhere that you like listening to your podcast. We also have a YouTube channel where we publish video accompaniments with the podcast, and then our website, www.thesalesdocrx.com, where we house all of our content and resources, not only from the episodes, but also all the actionable things that we create here at The Sales Doctor, and we would love for you to go check those out. Thank you so much for your time today. Tommy, appreciate you stopping by and sharing your insights, and we'll talk to everybody soon.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Bye.